WABC, Mike, you don't agree with any of this. Go ahead, please.
Dr. Savage, you cannot leave marks on another human being and then just try to brush that under the rug. You cannot.
Fine. That's true, but what if this person was threatening your candidate and the Secret Service failed to act? I think Corey Lewandowski did her a favor because if he had not stepped in, the Secret Service might have thrown her to the floor and arrested her.
If they were going to do anything, they would have done it. If they felt there was...
No, they didn't. The guy was a dummy. The Secret Service agent was a dummy like a log. The guy didn't even see her coming. He failed. He failed, Mr. Trump, by the way. What if a Syrian reporter showed up with a pen in her hand, and the pen was, in fact, a pen bomb, and the Secret Service agent did nothing? Would you say he did his job?
But, Dr. Savage, they all have pens in their hands. This is an innocuous...
But who all has pens in their hands? Who all has pens in their hands?
Reporters, bloggers.
Okay, I get it. And you're telling me, therefore, that a person could not fake being a reporter with a pen in their hand and it's really a weapon? The Secret Service has a specific task. It's to create a cordon around the presidential candidate, whether it be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And if someone approaches them with an object in their hand, the Secret Service agent is not supposed to let that person touch the candidate. Do we agree on that at least?
We agree on that.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. But you're going over your own words. We agree on that. So why did the Secret Service agent fail to act?
Because they didn't see actual threats. They act when they see threats, like 2 weeks ago when they saw that.
Wait, no, don't change the subject. So you wouldn't see it as a threat if you were in a public location and you're a public figure, and a public figure who has been threatened with death by El Chapo, by ISIS and others. You wouldn't see this as a threat? Some unknown girl reporter showing up with an object in her hand, you wouldn't see that as a threat that you should brush away if you're working for the Secret Service?
Her credentials are checked upon entering the event.
What credentials? She has no credentials. What credentials did she have? This is the same woman who claimed the NYPD threw her to the ground while she jumped into the Occupy movement. She's a troublemaker. She's a troublemaker who is trying to claw her way into the media. And by the way, she's just been rewarded by Roger Ailes. I think he's hired her for the chorus line, where she belongs. She's exactly on the same level as the other Manalo wearers. I think he had an extra pair of pumps in the back room that fit her perfectly, just waiting for Cinderella. And a pair of false fingernails and false eyelashes to go along with the false credentials. Breitbart reporter. You hear? Some credentials, that is. Breitbart reporter. All of a sudden, she's a credentialed reporter. 3 weeks ago, if you had said anyone from Breitbart was a reporter, anyone in the media would have sneered at you. Now, all of a sudden, oh, she was a legitimate reporter. 3 weeks ago, they would have sneered at Breitbart reporter. You hear? Now, all of a sudden, she's legitimate. She's on the level of the New York Times already. I don't know how you don't see the bigger picture. If you let this kid reporter, this girl reporter who has a history of making herself the story, who has a history of accusing everyone around her of assaulting her, as she did with the NYPD. And by the way, who do you believe, the NYPD or the girl reporter from Breitbart? And then we learned today that the reporter herself, who caused all this trouble, worked for Breitbart News, which is funded by a Cruz supporter who gives millions and millions of dollars to Cruz and gave millions of dollars, $10 million to be exact, according to the New York Times, to the Breitbart organization to keep them going. Because most of these websites make no money. I don't know if you know that. With the exception of only one that I know of, all of them are broke. Did you know that? There's only one or two that make money. All the rest of them are struggling to make a dime. They need investors. I don't know if you know that. It's a very interesting story unto itself. Despite all of the love that we have for these websites, and we do love them because they provide a great service and great news or stories, whichever way you want to put it, they're not money makers. They make no money. They need sugar daddies. So here we have a hedge fund sugar daddy who supports Cruz in a big way, and the same hedge fund sugar daddy supports Breitbart News. And lo and behold, the reporter, the female reporter, who's screaming that she almost got murdered, this and that, her arm was broken, she worked for the very same Breitbart News. And by the way, speaking to the integrity of the editor-in-chief, he fired her right after this because he said she was making herself the story, which is a violation of all objective journalistic standards. He fired her. And along with her, they threw out a slimy lawyer who used to work for someone I know, one of the worst people I've ever encountered in my whole life, a weasel of the lowest order with a law degree. And go ahead, let him sue me for that, because I'd love to show you what he did to me. I'd love you to, go ahead, make my day. I'd like to publish what you put out in letters that were all false, you slimeball, you. You don't know who I'm talking about. Good. That's good. Now, what would you like to talk about? Tracy on WJR, go ahead, you're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, I guess the thing that's made me the angriest that I've heard on talk shows is everyone keeps saying, what if it was your mother? What if it was your daughter or your wife? The question they should be asking is, what if it was a man? If it was a man, that had done exactly the same thing, nobody would be saying anything. But because she was a woman, the Secret Service let her through, and somebody else had to do their job for them. And she's playing on that fact, because if she wasn't a woman, this wouldn't be a story.
I think you make a good point. Tracy, I haven't heard that yet. You're a very good detective. You'd make a very fair prosecutor, because there'd be nothing to prosecute here. She's the one who caused the problem. See, they're twisting the story into something along the lines of Lewandowski went out of his way to hurt this poor woman. That's crazy. He didn't even know her from a hole in the wall. Would he know whether she was a friend or foe? How would you know that if someone's approaching your candidate and you're supposed to protect them and the Secret Service let her through? What would you do if you were him?
I would have done the same thing. I think they failed.
And by the way, any female police officer listening to the show, any female Secret Service agent listening to the show, any female in the executive protection business would have done the same thing. Okay, so this story will be over after today when we find out who's funding Breitbart, who's funding Cruz is the same. But I thank you for the call, Tracy. That's an amazing analysis. KLIF, Dallas, Robin, go ahead. Your opinion, please. What's your call here? You're Casey Stengel. Who's out? Who's in?
Well, since they came out with that new, Trump released and the police released the new thing, I went back and I listened to the audio and I did a measurement. And Corey made contact with her for all of a third of a second. That is not very long. She also, her bruises on her arms, from that picture you can see that he grabbed her elbow to upper arm, and her bruises are down by her wrist. They're on her forearm. And they're old, they're the wrong color, and she had a heavy jacket, a heavy suit jacket on. So how in, the body well, Dr. Savage, how could you bruise someone by grabbing their sleeve for not even a third of a second with a jacket, a thick suit jacket on?
Well, I want to correct you for 1 second. I do not know her body well. I want to make that very clear.
You know about.
I'm joking. Come on, I just need to leaven it up a bit. No, I don't know her body well, but you make a good point. So the third of a second that the press secretary brushes her aside, in other words, to keep her away from Donald Trump, was on her upper arm, and now she's showing bruises on her forearm. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, look it up. The pictures, the tweet that she sent out, it shows her.
Well, I got news for you. If this comes out in a court of law, this girl could wind up in prison. If she's making false claims and the lawyers are good enough, she could wind up in prison for false accusations.
And the other thing is...
We don't need the equivalent of a Salem witch trial here on Donald Trump's campaign manager, do we? Why would you want a Salem witch trial on a guy like this who simply did his job? He didn't run out of his way to hurt a reporter, by the way. And incidentally, he didn't even know what she was going to ask. He didn't know if she was conservative. He didn't know if she was liberal. He didn't try to interfere with the great sacred reporter's job, as the media's trying to show. Suddenly she's a reporter without borders, a really brave woman. That's not the issue. Now, Robin, where did you get all your information from about the bruising? Where did you find all of this?
Well, she had tweeted out the bruising thing. She had tweeted out a picture, and she said, "Oh yeah, how did I get this? If he didn't touch me, how did these bruises happen?" Well, her
first statement was that he almost threw her to the floor. Then, when the video came out of the incident, which she did not know existed, she changed her story.
Yeah, and Megyn Kelly won't play the audio where he says, "Excuse me, thank you." I mean, he says, "Excuse me, thank you." That happens in...
Would you please refer to her as Mad Gun Kelly from now on, please? We don't call her by her original name.
Mad Gun Kelly, yes, okay.
Mad Gun Kelly, who has lost all credibility during these debates. She's shown herself for what she really is, just like this girl. And the only thing she's fit for is to be on Dancing with the Stars with Obama as her tango partner. But please refer to Mad Gun Kelly by her proper name. And I thank you for elucidating the audience, Robin, from KLIF in Dallas. WFTL in Fort Lauderdale itself. Bill, welcome to the Savage Nation. Step right up.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. I live in Palm Beach County, and I am no fan of David Ehrenberg, but I wanted to say that as of right now, only the Jupiter, Florida Police Department has filed a charge against Corey Lewandowski. And
yes, I'm fully aware of that. So let's analyze that. When did this incident occur? On what date? Do you know?
Not filed any formal charge as of right now.
No, I heard you, but try to hear me. When did this alleged incident occur, this violent assault against this poor reporter? When did this occur?
It occurred a couple of weeks ago at some campaign.
Right. It occurred a couple of weeks ago. Was it on the 8th, I believe? And it took the Jupiter police almost 3 weeks to bring a case. Wouldn't you suspect that they consulted with their higher-ups? And don't you suspect that the police chief of Jupiter, Florida, a little two-horse town, is like every other police chief always looking over his shoulder at his boss, his political boss, as they did in the Soviet Union? And wouldn't you assume, therefore, that this was a political decision in some part?
Well, it may be, but at this point, Lewandowski has 3 lawyers representing him.
No, but you're changing the subject. Your main point was that the state prosecutor, Mr. Ehrenberg, didn't bring the charges. It was the Jupiter police. And I have shown you that this is a very political decision by this tiny little 2-horse police department.
Well, all I'm saying is there's no charge until the state attorney's office acts, and I don't believe that.
I understand that, but even the police took 3 weeks to make a decision. Why did they take 3 weeks if it was such a violent assault?
It was a hot potato.
I'm sorry, hot potatoes?
Sure.
In other words, they analyzed whether to bring the charges. The little 2-horse police department in Jupiter. And so how would they analyze whether or not to bring the charges? Wouldn't they go to their party bosses? The one who makes sure the police chief gets funded? The one who makes sure the police chief moves up the line, downstream? Wouldn't they go to their Democrat party bosses and ask whether or not to bring the charges? I think if you follow my line of reasoning, you'd have to conclude this is a purely political charge from the beginning to the end. That's all. 855-407-282. WABC, Frank, line 8. I know you want to talk about it. I'm listening. Go ahead, please.
It's really simple. How come there's no accountability for people making false claims? How come there's no accountability for people who exaggerate, and for political purposes or whatever? It doesn't matter what the purpose is. They just outright.
I understand. In an age when so many women are really abused badly by bad men, how they could turn this thing into something it's not is an embarrassment, because it's going to weaken every woman's claim about true domestic abuse after this. No one's going to, in other words, any woman's going to bring a charge from now on where you can't actually see the bruises on her body is going to not be believed. Do you know that because of this woman?
No, you said that she belongs to Dancing with the Stars. She belongs on Ricky Lake. She's going to be next Ricky Lake.
No, I don't know who Ricky Lake is, but okay. Thank you very much for the suggestion.